Welcome to the Scrum.org Community Podcast, a podcast from the home of Scrum. In this podcast, we feature professional Scrum trainers and other Scrum practitioners sharing their stories and experiences to help learn from the experience of others. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scrum.org Community Podcast. My name's Dave West. I'm your host and CEO here at Scrum.org, and I'm very, very, very fortunate to have one of our amazing PSTs on the line today, Steven Deneir. Steven, welcome to the podcast. Hi.
Hi, hello, Dave. Happy to be here.
Great to have you here, even though I'm speaking to you from actually a warm Boston, Massachusetts in February. But where are you dialing in from today, Steven?
I'm dialing in from Belgium. Sunny, yeah, but very windy today. Very, very windy. The trees are moving left to right.
I know about the storm that you're currently experiencing, Stephen. It came here a little while ago and managed to leave large amounts of snow. So I'm glad you just got the wind. That's actually a great thing. So welcome to the podcast. So hopefully this will be an experience and an enjoyable experience, and we'll get to some really interesting anecdotes and experiences about professional Scrum and your journey here. So to start, I'd love to kick it off with you to introduce yourself and maybe share with our listeners a little fun fact. It's always good to put a little bit of a smile on anybody's face as we start this conversation.
Cool. Maybe what is interesting for people is that they know what I get excited about, and it's about sharing experiences from my side so that I can give my insights, what people can use then to benefit from to overcome their challenges. And if I then hear them back after a few years and they say, this is what I applied, that really makes my day. It's really funny what even happened a few weeks ago, it was, with my banker. So she came in to have a chat about how the banking activities went for my independent company. And she noticed a little post-it on my screen, and it states, it's still here in front of me. It states, choose your attitude, put in the work every single day. And she saw that and she was saying, what does that mean? And we got into a chat how I use that, and at least for half an hour how she could use that. And so she left as a happy banker. And I do hope that it helps her with my bank account to make me more happy. But let's see what that brings.
Happy bankers. So Steve, if you have an unhappy banker, or you are an unhappy banker, you know where to come to get that extra bit of banking happiness, Stephen. I think the point that you raised around stories is such an important thing. This idea of telling stories, an idea, so Scrum is made up of a series of ideas like empiricism, self-management, etc. Being able to tell stories about those things not only connects you to the audience, but it also you remember stories. We as human beings, sitting around a campfire 30,000 years ago, right? It's always about the stories that connected us and provided that belonging.
Definitely, it's always about stories. I have a son and a daughter. They are both swimmers, and their trainer was telling them exactly the same. What they remember will not be the competitions or the trainings. It are really the stories they will tell of the stages they had together and having a lot of fun and telling these things to their friends and to their own kids later on, hopefully. It's all about stories.
It really is. And hopefully if those stories can actually provide a positive outcome and provide you with maybe a changing thinking, or in that case with the banker, that attitude change, then, I can do that. I'm going to be nice. I'm going to smile. Maybe those things are things that they can take away, which is awesome to hear. So Stephen, the storyteller, I think is how I'm going to remember you from now on. So you're a PST at Scrum.org. So I'd love to I think our listeners are really interested in the journey that it took to become the PST and some of those key stories along the way, Stephen. So I'm going to share some of those with our listeners.
Do we take the long track, being I started with Scrum since 2001, or do we take the short track since I started doing my assessment?
No, let's not talk about your the application process of everybody. They can always go online and see that. Let's talk about your long journey to that decision point where you said, I'm going to become a PST.
Yeah. So the first time I got in contact with Scrum itself as a framework was 2001. Well, I had a great manager then, and he pointed me to that little black book that time, Agile Software Development with Scrum. And so I dived in, and we had really a project at that moment that was going nowhere, but really, really nowhere. So I read a little book, discussed with my teammates about it, and we decided to give it a try.
Yeah.
And so we started first day with sprint planning. It was a little disaster, probably. I don't recall that one. But what happened is that the team members started to trust each other after a while. Like, hey, this is going to work. We can deliver little things and bigger things and bigger things. And our customers start smiling after a few months. And the reality was that after 6 months, we went to production for the first time. And it was a huge success. And I will always remember that moment. It was so nice to see people that deliver a result to a client and that you see the client smiling. That's awesome. So that was my first introduction to Scrum. Now, unfortunately, the company was bought for a totally other initiative that we had running. And we were thanked for our services by then. So yeah, it happens, right? So I left. I went into another company that was really more in the command and control style. Fine, it happens. And I got into why is that? What's happening? And I learned honestly all these project management frameworks and tried to apply them. Now, the interesting thing is that each time that we ran into something that was more challenging, more daunting, I always came back to the Scrum framework, to that little book I read, like, okay, how can we as a team cut that challenge into little pieces and bit by bit get it solved? So in all these other processes that I read about, they didn't really help me out, nor the practices, nor the toolings. But I each time felt back to on my feet, thanks to, break it down in little pieces, learn from it, try out something else if it doesn't work, and get back to that. Until the moment that I got into contact with a person who apparently understood Scrum way better than I did by then. And he opened my eyes what professional Scrum could be. It was in another training that I followed. And then the last little nugget I needed was him telling, we want to collaborate. I give this type of training. I want someone who gives the professional Scrum Master and product owner training. Are you interested? And that was the little nudge until my application form.
Excellent. So it's interesting that, Scrum is very, very simple, right? It's, a few pages, even in Flemish or it's still only a few pages. So I'm sure some of the words are a lot longer. It's incredibly simple, whereas these project management frameworks are incredibly long and complicated. But at the heart of it is this simple premise of empirical process and self-managed teams, and this idea that you can improve both the way you're working and the outcomes that you seek, which is at the heart of everything. And sometimes we build these incredibly complicated organizations to almost avoid it. So that was your first experience of Scrum, and then you continued to sort of learn and apply it and those other things. What do you think, how do you think that Scrum has changed in your head from that first moment? Is there anything that sort of stands out? You had that conversation with the person that knew Scrum better than you. What were the differences? What was it? Professional Scrum that you were introduced to? What were those sort of key differences? What is professional Scrum to you?
Yeah, so when I started with it and what I tried in the beginning before was more about doing it. And there's a little guide there. Let's do this event. Let's have that artifact, without being conscious that, in fact, people are at the core of it all. And I was then introduced at that given moment to what done really means. What is a definition of done? What does it bring? How does that help towards customer value? And how does a team that trusts each other can get to that point every single sprint? And these concepts were like very eye-opening to me at that moment. Like, yeah, of course, this is what always helped me out in the end. And people say that they read the beginning and only remember the beginning and the end of a text or something. But I have the impression on the Scrum framework, on the Scrum guide, they forget just that part, even though it is at the beginning. It is about empiricism in the beginning, about the team. And it seems that people tend to forget. And to me, that was the biggest eye-opener. But not that I didn't do it. It was just making it so conscious for me. Yeah, and as of that moment, I really went into people and team collaboration, and yeah, that was the biggest change to me. In fact, that it became conscious.
I think that the power of people. It's an amazing optimistic perspective that Scrum provides us with, really, compared to traditional project management frameworks. That we trust people and we believe that they're amazing at doing things and fixing things and creating things. No problem is too hard for them. They're like the sort of, I don't know, the Scooby-Doo's gang, or they'll always get to the bottom of it. They'll always solve the problem, and because we trust them. And if they can't solve the problem, they'll make it transparent, and we'll be able to make the decisions around it if you're a leader, etc. So that people-centric stuff is really important, and empiricism gives us a great tool to get to the heart of the problem that we're trying to solve.
I think there's an important thing that you mentioned there, and that is that we trust people. I've been in some organizations where the trust was very, very, very low. And then you see that transparency is not there, that people don't dare to open their mouth to say, this is not going to work. I don't believe in it. Whereas managers keep pushing. And if we can break through that, then you see immediately a change taking place, and people getting more open and saying, okay, I will be open to share that little bit of it won't work and see how that lands. And if it lands well, then they dare to say more and more. I had a team and they had to deliver a machine, a big machine, a huge machine. And apparently something happened in the past, way years before I was there, making it a very hierarchical and environment where people didn't trust one another. And I couldn't find out why until the moment that I knew that manager X had said something, not so great in the past, and it kept chasing him. And I talked with that manager, and he knew about it, and he was no longer that person. He really wasn't. He wanted to be different. He was different, but people didn't saw him like that. It took me over 8 months, Dave, to get 2 of the team members into the office of that manager. And once that happened, they understood that he was indeed no longer that person he was before. And step by step, you saw them improving. I got two people in, 3 people in, 4 people in. They started saying what was the real deal. And in the end, a daunting initiative, they succeeded in the end. Not as they intended to do it in the beginning, but they succeeded. They had a result. And from there, they could improve. That was a big eye-opener also for me, that something can chase people for years, even if they don't want it to be like that anymore. And that is...
Trust is easy to lose, hard to gain, but crucial.
Very hard.
When working in complex problems that require innovative solutions and people to work together, if you don't trust your team, if you don't trust each other, and if you don't trust that the leaders have got your back, then it's very, very hard to do the things that we're trying to do, and trying to build products that change the world, trying to deliver more value than we've ever delivered before. And I think we have a great opportunity with Scrum to shine a light on trust and on accountability and responsibility, and those things can ultimately create better human beings, I believe, but also better outcomes. So we try to keep these talks incredibly short. We could talk for hours, Steven, about these topics, as we will, no doubt, in the future, maybe face-to-face at some point in the future. So any sort of like final words to our listeners? You know, this is the Scrum.org community podcast focusing on professional Scrum, focusing on our PSTs. Is there anything you'd like to leave them with as they're listening as they walk their dog or do their grocery shop?
Yeah, I think if there's one exercise that they want to redo regularly with their teams, it is look back at the Scrum values, however you name them, fine. But look back to them and see how you can, as a team, live them better. And I'm convinced doing that will bring a better and a more professional use of Scrum in the team. I'm convinced of that. I've seen it happen and happen again. That's one of the things I always give as a tip to my teams. Just do it again. Even if I leave, do it again, do it again, do it again.
That is a great advice. That's sort of like framework for introspection, if that's the word. That the sort of like, have I really been courageous? Have I really respected you? Have I demonstrated that? And having a nice safe space where you can share those things. It's amazing that as much as we talk about the problems are complicated and we're doing really technical work, ultimately at the end of the day, it's always about the people that make it successful or unsuccessful. Steven, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, Steven has talked to us a little bit about the importance of done, the value of people, the necessary safety that's created, and ultimately the idea of trust, and how dangerous having not trusting people and not demonstrating trust to your teams can have, how dangerous it is in terms of the outcomes that you receive. Thank you for coming, Steven, from a sunny, windy Belgium. Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen, and hopefully I'll catch you again on the Scrum.org community podcast. Bye-bye, everyone.